Okay, good morning everyone. Happy Friday. It is August 6th, 2021, and we're going to get started here with our pre-market analysis on the S&P 500 futures market. But first, I do want to talk about two things. First of all, yesterday and the day before, we talked about looking at our higher time frames and intermediate time frames, and I'll just go ahead and bring up the daily here just because it kind of illustrates this pretty clearly. We had a lot more bullish indications off the lows in this sideways chop that we've been in than bearish indications. And so yesterday we talked about that, and we also talked about it the day before, and we did finally get this slow trend higher, and then broke the all-time high yesterday, pulled back in the pre-market or in the Globex session, and then continued to push to new all-time highs. So this breakout to the upside, if you just watched our pre-market yesterday and watched the pre-market the day before, was already in the cards, and we talked about it. Now, another thing I do want to bring up really quickly here is that last night at 5 o'clock, I want to say here, 5:10 p.m., you can see daily down to the 10-minute. We had a very clear, very clear 10-minute, daily down to the 10-minute had a very clear bear signal off the high. And now we're bouncing off of 44.16 with a very clear multiple time frame bullish signal from the 512 tick up to the 60 minute. So that's 512, 1 minute, 3 minute, 10 minute, 30 minute, and 60 minute all gave a bullish indication off of that 44.16. And I put a picture in here right about after we started bouncing from that level. Now, I went ahead and got long at 44.17. So back here is where we got that signal. That's when I put it in the chat. The current market price was 44.18 at the time. The market did pull back to 17, but eventually did come up and go over 10 points in the overnight session. So I left my trade on for long from 44.17. My stop was below the swing low at 16. And so I was able to grab 5 points and 10 points. And luckily, just right at the NFP this morning, it ticked up. It got me at 44.27 and then sold off. So I got a little bit of luck in there in getting that final position off. But overall, just wanted to cover some of that stuff here to start this morning. So let's go ahead and jump up to our ultra high time frames here and take a look at the picture. As you can see, monthly now looking incredibly, or quarterly looking incredibly strong here. Still no signs of exhaustion. Same exact story on our monthly chart here. Let's go down to our weekly. And interestingly enough, okay, first of all, let's address the top end. So we did talk about the potential bearish indication we got since price did push to a higher high, but the RVI was basically staying at the same level. But as you can see that this is slowly now trending higher here. This is basically what we would call a false signal. Did not end up getting a nice peak and a turn in RVI down here. And so, that's basically was at the time looked like, especially when you couldn't see the next candle, did look like we had a bearish indication. But now as things kind of, I guess you could say, evolve here in the market, it looks like that ended up being a false signal. So we'll go ahead and get rid of that. And we also talked about that potential bullish divergence we saw off the lows. But again, as this candle develops, and I did tell you, we have 2 more days of price action before this finally closes and this signal finally forms. That signal that we were seeing on RVI pushing down like this, if you remember yesterday, I think it looked something like this. It was like pushing down here. And so we had the lower low on RVI, but the higher low on price. Now it looks like that's evolved or developed a little bit further here, and we no longer have that case. What we have here is no clear indication of exhaustion. So as this continues to develop, we've pushed from this previous high on RVI to this higher high on RVI, and we've pushed from that previous price to now this higher price. So higher high on RVI, higher high on weekly, no signs of exhaustion up here. So that's a great thing. So all three ultra high time frames, no signs of exhaustion on this push. When we get to the daily, as we said earlier, basically got a lot of bullish indications on every pullback and really only got one clear bearish exhaustion pattern or signal back on the 29th, and ever since then really did not see anything until right now. So what you're seeing is price is now, at least from this previous swing high over here, we have pushed higher, but we can make an argument here that we have pushed a little lower, and then even arguably from that last swing high on RVI as well, we have pushed higher. And so you can see the beginnings of what could potentially be a bearish exhaustion pattern, but we need to keep in mind here that this current candle has all of today to develop. So we've got, I don't know what it is, maybe another 10 hours or something like that. So in 10 hours, the picture could change. Maybe this RVI could come up a little further. Right now, though, we could argue from the previous candle, we do have that bearish case. But what I don't like here is the fact that we have this straight line. And so as this continues to develop, this might end up being another false signal off of our previous daily candle. Just kind of like what we saw here on our weekly. So we'll have to kind of monitor this and see what ends up happening. But right now, there is kind of a weak argument for a bearish signal at the moment on the daily. When we get to our 4 hour, you can see that we did have that bearish indication off the previous daily high, and that's what I put in the multi-time frame alert channel yesterday evening. The fact that we did get a bearish signal from the daily down to, I think, the 10-minute up top. We did not get the 3-minute, the 1-minute, or the 512 agreeing, but we did get that bearish signal, and you can see that there. We got the shallow pullback, and then there's that low at 44.16 where I then put out the trade signal or the multiple time frame alert that we got that bullish signal on the shorter time frames, and they got, the advancement out of there. Now, what I'm looking at over here is I don't necessarily like comparing going all the way back to this previous swing high back here, but there is an argument that could be made that from that swing high all the way back there to where we are right now, you do have a potential bearish indication right now. So on the daily and the 4 hour, they both have arguments for bearish signals right now, although arguably on the 4 hour, not the kind that I like to rely on, but it is definitely there. Let's go to our 60-minute. And on our 60-minute, again, here's that bullish indication that we got around 5:30 last night Pacific time. So we did get the push. There's the bearish indication from the previous daily high, so the pullback, then the bullish indication, and then this 10, 12, 15 point push from there. And right now, we do have a nice clear bearish divergence off of the current high. So our overnight high, if we look at it from the perspective of the 60-minute, from the 4 hour, and from the daily, we do have some arguments for bearishness. But we have to keep in mind as well that we've been kind of expecting a bullish break out of the chop zone that we were in for 10 days. And now that we've broken out and we're starting to trend and push higher, we could have exhaustion patterns, but that might not mean that we get some type of larger follow through. So just keep that in mind. Just because we do have things building up does not mean there's going to be a strong sell-off, but it's definitely a possibility. So let's go ahead and jump to the intermediate time frames here and take a look at what they're saying here. So again, there's the bullish indication around 5:30 last night Pacific time, and that's where we made that bullish call in the multi-time frame alert channel. Got this push up, and right now, yes, we do have some more bearish indications up top here on these intermediate time frames. So we got to keep this in mind, that this overnight high, if they can't go ahead and push through that and continue to go here, that's going to be a sign that we could get a more protracted kind of correction in this current move. If that does occur, you should keep in mind that we do have a pretty decent leg from the previous daily low to the current high. And so the retracement, the first interesting retracement level, brings us right back to this swing high in the market, which is where we bounced from that signal we gave last night. So, you know, that might, since it's already been used, maybe it doesn't quite use it the second time here, but a little bit deeper would bring us right to the next interesting area of resistance, which was just below it around 44.14 to 44.15 here. And then the 61.8 retracement would bring us right into 50% of the previous daily price action. And that previous swing high, if you look here, right around 44.08. So just some interesting levels below us if this does pull back a little bit. Let's look at our 10-minute just to see. 10-minute also giving agreement of the bearish case off the overnight high. And so we do have a lot of bearish indications right now. They did try to push. You can see a huge wick to the upside here on this 10-minute candle, and just a little bit of trouble in following through in this bullish trend that started back, I guess you could argue, all the way back on August 4th, the low of that day, right around 43.91 quarter. So we are getting a little bit of signs of exhaustion. Keep in mind, though, we also got a myriad of bearish signals here off of the previous daily high, and only led to a 7-point pullback, and then we got all the bullish indications, and then it continued higher. So we could have another situation here where we have a lot of bearish indications off the top here. We get this pullback from 29 all the way back to 17, so about 12 points there, and then they could now just continue to advance higher. What I am noticing here on the 10-minute is the fact that we pushed higher here from this previous swing low, or at least stayed at the same level, but the RVI did push lower. So there's also a bullish indication there from that wick at the low end. And I should probably go back to my 30-minute and see if we get the same thing. So we have essentially this type of situation here where we're flat or very close to flat, but the RVI has gone and pushed way higher here. So we do have the counter indication off the low of this candle. And then if I look over to my 60-minute and my 4-hour, essentially it's the same thing. We have a lot of bullish indications right off that swing low at 17.50. So we want to keep in mind that although we did get those bearish indications, those are counter trend indications. The indications we're getting that go with the trend are confirming a bullish case from that low at 44.17 quarter. So we have our line in the sand for the morning here. We're going to want to break above that 29 quarter in order for all the bullish signals that we got off of all these pullbacks to continue to follow through. If they have come up here and they have trouble and they start to pull back, it wouldn't be surprising to have a little bit deeper of a correction here. So keep that in mind for this morning, and I think that's where we'll leave it for now. And then we can dial down to our shorter time frames to see if we can get some entries.